Coming up on our newscast tonight, President Moon Jae-in begins his state visit to Russia. He becomes the first Korean leader to visit that nation in this century and the first Korean president to address the lower house of Russia's Federal Assembly. The government plans to grant greater investigative authority to the nation's police. This comes as a major reform of the prosecution was deemed necessary due to a rampant number of corruption cases. The two Koreas are set to meet on Friday to discuss a long-awaited reunion for war-torn families, the first since 2015. Set to take place on Mount Kumgang up north, Seoul's side is sending a team led by the head of the Korean Red Cross. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, coming to you live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome, I'm Daniel Choi. President Moon Jae-in is in Russia for a 3-day visit. In about half an hour, he will deliver a speech at the State Duma, becoming the first South Korean head of state to do so. We will bring you live coverage of that historic event as it develops later in our newscast. First, Hwang Ho-jun starts things off with the Liberal leader's itinerary.
At the invitation of his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin, this is the first time a sitting South Korean president has made an official state visit to Russia in 19 years. To kick off his 3-day stay, President Moon will deliver a speech before the State Duma, the lower house of Russia's Federal Assembly. This will be the first time a sitting South Korean president has done so. It's been a key diplomatic policy of the Moon administration to expand South Korea's diplomatic and economic horizons with its Eurasian neighbors, the quote, new northern policy. So observers expect President Moon will introduce his vision for boosting Seoul-Moscow relations. In fact, it was in Vladivostok, Russia, that he first introduced the concept when he was attending the Eastern Economic Forum last September. And considering the region's turbulent geopolitical landscape, it's likely that President Moon will ask for Russia's active cooperation in the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. After a speech at the Duma, President Moon is set to meet with Russian Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev. On Friday, President Moon will hold a summit with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin, which will be followed by a state dinner. He will also meet with South Koreans living in Russia and business representatives from both countries. After completing his itinerary in Moscow, President Moon will fly to the southwestern city of Rostov-on-Don to cheer on South Korea in their World Cup match against Mexico, and that's where he'll wrap up his 2-night stay, the first official state visit to Russia by a South Korean leader since 1999. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
Attention is being drawn to the overall implications of this special state visit. One of the highlights is the summit between the two leaders who were no strangers, having met several times before. Our Cha Sang-mi sheds light on the significance of the timing of the sit-down, as well as what both sides seek to get out of it.
Russia is the place to be these days, not just for soccer fans, but also for world leaders conducting diplomacy. President Moon Jae-in's state visit to Russia follows a series of meetings involving the Koreas, all of them historic. The two inter-Korean summits, the Singapore summit between President Trump and Kim Jong-un, and the North Korean leader's third meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping. One key topic in the South Korea-Russia talks will be undoubtedly North Korea, and specifically its denuclearization. One expert says Seoul wants to get Russia involved in the denuclearization talks through potential economic projects by Moscow and Pyongyang.
Right now, to handle North Korean issue, South Korea badly needs outside support. And one of the goals is to get Russia involved in dealing with North Korea. First of all, economic projects. I'm pretty sure there will be some discussions about railway and gas pipeline. These discussions will not yield any significant results. However, there are other areas which are of great importance and where progress can be made.
Though North Korea's trade with Russia is worth just 2% of what it trades with China, the expert says Russia is still a status quo power and its soft power in North Korea should not be underestimated. And expert says it's not just Seoul trying to cozy up to Moscow. Both sides have an interest in strengthening their long-neglected bilateral ties. In exchange for support and developments on the Korean peninsula, Russia wants to bring in South Korean investment.
Russia has never requested economic cooperation from China, fearing that Chinese capital and people flowing into the Far East region could create massive territorial disputes. That's why Putin agreed to economic cooperation with Prime Minister Abe. But there could also be territorial issues with Japan in the northern regions, which is why South Korean investment is politically the most stable for Russia.
Economic cooperation experts say will take a long time to bear fruit. But like the Koreans saying, starting is half the task. 차상미, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Kim Jong-un wrapped up his third visit to China. Not only did the North Korean leader meet with President Xi Jinping, he spent a fair amount of time touring Beijing's major city management and research centers. Lee Ji-won zooms in on what could be some clues as to the direction he intends to take Pyongyang.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un had a busy second day in Beijing. The state-run Korean Central News Agency reported Thursday on Kim's activities, where he first met with Chinese President Xi Jinping again following their first meeting on Tuesday. The report said they met at the Diaoyu Thai State Guest House in the morning, where Kim stayed during his visit. Kim and President Xi had a one-on-one chat where they reportedly exchanged opinions on the current situation and urgent international issues. The two also discussed ways to further strengthen their strategic cooperation given the new circumstances on the Korean peninsula. Then, together with their wives, North Korea's First Lady Lee Seol-ju and Chinese First Lady Peng Liyuan, the leaders had lunch in a, quote, harmonious and family-like atmosphere, through which the North's news agency highlighted the deep friendship the two first couples share. After bidding farewell to President Xi and his wife, Kim then toured some of Beijing's research and transportation management centers. His first stop was the Academy of Agricultural Sciences, where he was accompanied by Cabinet Premier Park Bong-ju and Park Tae-sung, the Workers' Party's vice chairman for science and education. The report explained how the Academy does research on the industrialization of agriculture and that Kim toured various research centers asking questions about their experience and achievements. Perhaps thinking about implementing the findings in North Korea, Kim noted how the Academy's science and technology has greatly contributed to China's agricultural development. Kim also visited the Beijing Rail Traffic Control Center, where the Chinese capital's railways and subways are controlled and managed. The state-run media report said Kim paid close attention to how the system works and said he was, quote, amazed by the excellently programmed control system. And as the final itinerary, Kim dropped by the North Korean embassy in Beijing. Expressing great satisfaction for a productive third trip to China, Kim left for North Korea late Wednesday, arriving at Pyongyang International Airport in the evening. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
Delegations from Seoul and Pyongyang are meeting once again tomorrow for the Red Cross talks. The main item on the agenda is the reunions of separated families, but other humanitarian issues could be discussed as well. Oh Jung-hee gets us up to speed with the developments.
The two Koreas are holding Red Cross talks on Friday at North Korea's Mount Kumgang to discuss humanitarian issues, including the reunions of families separated by the Korean War. South Korea is sending a 4-member delegation led by the president of the South Korean Red Cross, Park Kyung-seo. North Korea has not yet notified Seoul of its delegates. The South Korean delegation left Seoul on Thursday afternoon. They plan to spend the night in Gosang in the northeast of Gangwon-do province and cross the eastern land border early Friday morning.
I hope to have good discussions with the North on humanitarian issues, especially resolving the sorrow of over 57,000 separated family members in South Korea.
The main agenda on the table is setting the schedules for the family reunions. The leaders of Seoul and Pyongyang agreed at their summit talks in April to hold reunions for separated families on around August 15th, National Liberation Day. If the reunion event is to take place, this will be the first time in 3 years since the last event in October 2015. Over 132,000 people are registered as separated from their family members, but among them, only 56,000 are alive, and among those, 85% are over 70 years old. South Korea is likely to suggest that the North allow separated family members to exchange letters and visit their hometowns, but it's unclear whether Pyongyang will accept the proposal. Other than the family reunions, some other humanitarian issues could be discussed at Friday's talks, like releasing South Korean detainees in the north and Seoul providing humanitarian assistance to Pyongyang through the World Food Program and UNICEF. 오정희, Arirang News.
Pyongyang reportedly returned the remains of hundreds of American soldiers that fought in the Korean War. While there are no official confirmation from military authorities, according to our Ko Ryun-hee, multiple news outlets are citing U.S. officials about the specific transfer plan.
Speaking at a rally in Minnesota on Wednesday, U.S. President Donald Trump said North Korea has returned the remains of 200 U.S. troops missing from the Korean War.
We got back our great fallen heroes, the remains. In fact, today already 200 have been sent back.
Multiple news outlets had been saying the transfer was going to happen soon, citing U.S. officials. The Wall Street Journal reported Wednesday that they would be handed over in the next day or two. A U.S. official told the Journal that the remains would likely be brought to Osan Air Base, located some 60 kilometers south of Seoul. After a ceremony, the official said they would be sent to Hickam Air Force Base in Hawaii for scientific testing and identification. However, the official pointed out that the remains are commingled. This means that there might be individuals of other nationalities, not just Americans. After the identification process, non-U.S. remains will be sent back to their home countries. This comes after President Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un signed a joint statement at their summit in Singapore on June 12th, in which they committed to recovering the remains of prisoners of war and those missing in action from the Korean War, including the immediate repatriation of those already identified. According to the U.S. Department of Defense, about 7,700 U.S. military personnel remain unaccounted from the Korean War, of whom about 5,300 are estimated to be in North Korea. Meanwhile, South Korea's defense ministry said it can't confirm anything yet, including where the transfer was to take place. Ko Ryun-hee, Arirang News. The Moon Jae-in administration is seeking to divide investigative powers between prosecution and the police more evenly, all part of reform efforts deemed necessary as there have been many instances of corrupt prosecutors abusing their authority. Kim Min-ji explains further.
The South Korean government is looking to achieve a balance between the prosecution and police by diluting the concentration of investigative powers in the prosecution. Its proposed measures unveiled Thursday are aimed at having the prosecution and police work hand in hand, focusing on the expertise of their respective bodies. The biggest change is that the police will be given more autonomy and more responsibility during the initial investigation. They will have the right to investigate as well as the authority to close a case, independent of the prosecution. This means that the police will be able to determine whether or not to pursue an indictment. Under the current system, the police can open a case but cannot close it without approval from the prosecution, while investigations by the police are required to be overseen by a prosecutor. But to prevent the National Police Agency from becoming too powerful, the government plans to introduce autonomous police systems under the control of local governments starting next year. Meanwhile, prosecutors will be able to retain their sole authority to indict and apply for arrest warrants, despite their investigative powers being reduced. But they will be allowed to request reinvestigation into cases that they deem necessary or in any circumstances where the police are found to have misused their increased power.
The proposal will see the prosecution and police break away from the vertical system so they can cooperate and each take responsibility for people's safety and protecting human rights. This will enable each body to keep either in check and step up the efficiency of investigations.
The proposal is part of the Moon Jae-in administration's goal to reform the so-called organs of power, namely the prosecutor's office, the police, and the country's intelligence agency. Calls to overhaul the prosecution have been mounting, as the country has gone through a long period of irregularities that have infuriated the public. Prosecutors have been known to take advantage of their excessive power in high-profile cases of powerful people, such as politicians and business tycoons, for their own personal or financial benefit. The government has noted that the proposal will not be fully satisfactory to the prosecution or the police, saying they must put in the effort to work around the changes so that they don't spark internal feuds within their organizations. The proposal is now being passed to the National Assembly, where lawmakers will deliberate over the specifics and draw up a bill. But it's not expected to be easy, as the proposal is still very much disputed among parties involved, and with Parliament still at standstill. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
The nation's current account surplus with the world's two largest economies, the U.S. and China, hit a 5-year low. According to the Bank of Korea, goods account surplus with Washington dipped below $40 billion last year, down from 2016's $42.6 billion due to sluggish automobile and auto parts exports. The current account surplus fell even more sharply, recording $25.6 billion in 2017, down 18% on year, as Seoul's service account deficit with America widened on an increasing deficit in shipping and advertising. Current account surplus with Beijing also hit a 5-year low, just under $43 billion, due to a plunge in the travel account. The number of Chinese visitors to Korea was nearly halved due to a travel ban imposed over the THAAD dispute. A U.S. consumer report gave top spots to Korean automakers. Kia and Hyundai Motors, as well as its premium Genesis range, earned deserving recognition for outstanding quality. For details, let's turn to our Hong Yu.
The two Korean automakers and Hyundai's luxury brand Genesis have grabbed the top 3 rankings in one of the U.S. auto industry's most closely watched gauges of automotive quality, the J.D. Power 2018 U.S. Initial Quality Study. According to the report released on Wednesday, Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis hold the top 3 spots out of the 31 automobile brands included in the study. The result shows Hyundai's marketing technique of putting forth quality as its main selling point works in the U.S. auto market. The annual J.D. Power report measures car quality by analyzing problems reported by owners in the first 90 days of ownership. It marks the 2nd year in a row that Genesis has topped the rating among the other premium brands. Porsche and Lincoln were in 2nd and 3rd place. Hyundai Motors says this achievement is all the more significant as Genesis was only introduced into the U.S. market a couple of years ago, and the premium rating used to be dominated by German and Japanese automakers. With the wind in its back, Genesis will launch its first premium SUV in the U.S. next year. For Kia Motors, this is its 4th consecutive year topping the non-premium rating. Kia Sorento and Rio were granted the 2018 Quality Award in the midsize SUV and small car rating, respectively. J.D. Power study results are not only used as purchase criteria for many U.S. consumers, but are also seen as a key indicator of brand quality. As a result, market watchers expect the results to have a positive impact on the automakers' U.S. sales. Hong Yu, Arirang News.
Koreans turned to online banking services for more than 100 million times a day in the first half of 2018. Activities include logins, bank transfers, and loan applications through computers and smartphones. According to the nation's central bank, the numbers increased by 14% compared to the first half of 2017, surpassing 100 million usages per day for the first time. About 62.1% involve mobile banking. In contrast, the BOK added the use of banks and ATMs dipped as more people opt for online services. Last year, the trend of living alone was still going strong here in the nation. According to Statistics Korea, the number of single-person households surpassed 5.6 million as of October 2017, an increase of 3.3% on year. The data also show one-person homes accounted for 28.7% of all family units. Young people living by themselves seem to be settling down. The number of those aged 15 to 29 who were living alone and holding down jobs increased by 10.7%, the biggest jump among all age groups. Elsewhere around the world, U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order designed to keep undocumented migrant families together at the Mexican border. However, the fate of more than 2,000 children already separated from their parents is unclear. Noaram has more on this rare policy reversal and its impact.
President Trump had previously argued he had no authority to stop separations of illegal immigrant families at the border and that it was up to Congress. Just the day before he signed Wednesday's executive order, Trump said current law only allowed two policies: to open borders completely or criminally prosecute illegal entry. But it turns out he was able to exercise his authority, and now migrant families are able to stay together. Despite the executive order, Trump maintained his tough stance on immigration.
So we're keeping families together, and this will solve that problem. At the same time, we are keeping a very powerful border, and it continues to be a zero tolerance. We have zero tolerance for people that enter our country illegally.
Images of children being held in cages at border facilities and audio clips of them crying for their parents have sparked fury both domestically and globally. Though the executive order solves the separation issue, families will still be detained together when caught entering America illegally. Although they will be pushed to the front of the line for immigration proceedings, it is still unclear how long they will be detained. The prolonged detention of children could spark a potential legal battle, as a previous court settlement states minors caught at the border can only be held for 20 days. Noaram, Arirang News.
Turning to some World Cup action now, the latest three matches included some of the hot favorites to lift the cup. While the teams boast some of the biggest names in the game, it wasn't exactly goals galore. Here's Lee Seung-jae with the highlights from Russia.
Day 7 of the 2018 Russia World Cup kicked off at Moscow's famous Luzhniki Stadium, where Cristiano Ronaldo's Portugal took on Morocco in their second Group B match. Ronaldo, who's rumored to be headed out of Real Madrid, was letting his football do the talking, adding his fourth goal of the tournament right from the get-go, heading home in the 4th minute. Morocco created several chances to level things, but the Portuguese defense kept them at bay, as Portugal would hold on for the 1-0 victory, giving them 4 points in Group B, while Morocco suffered their second straight loss. In Rostov-on-Don, Uruguay booked their place in the round of 16 thanks to Luis Suarez's 23rd minute goal that was enough to beat Saudi Arabia. Uruguay's 1-0 win also officially seals Russia's spot in the knockout stages, as both teams have 6 points, with the host nation ahead on goal difference. The two countries will face off in their final Group A match next Monday. Finally, in Kazan, Iran were looking to add to the number of upsets at the World Cup and kept things level against Spain in the first half, despite Spain throwing everything at them. But the Iranian defense eventually buckled, with Diego Costa's goal in the early stage of the second half breaking the deadlock. In the 63rd minute, Iran's Saeed Aizatullahi had a goal ruled offside, and the video assistant referee concurred with the initial call, helping to ensure Spain kept their 1-0 lead until the final whistle. The win leaves Spain with 4 points, tied with Portugal atop Group B. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Now, this is normally when we would wrap things up, but we do have some extension here. We continue to look at some of the developments from Moscow. President Moon Jae-in is said to become the first president of the Asian nation to address the State Duma as an Asian nation at the Federal Assembly, the lower house. Among other topics, he is likely to focus on sharing his vision for the new Northern policy to expand Seoul's diplomatic and economic horizons with its Eurasian neighbors. That means boosting Seoul-Moscow relations is a crucial step. To help us navigate through the historic events set to unfold before us, we have Professor An Jun-sung from the Graduate School of International Studies, Yonsei University. Good to have you with us at this hour.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Well, first of all, let's start with a general overview of the situation. It's another milestone by President Moon Jae-in, the first visit by a South Korean leader to Moscow in this century. How would you gauge the overall significance of this event?
I think the most important is about the time issue, because it's been 19 years since the last state visit made by the South Korean president was the former President Kim Dae-jung in 1999. So almost 2 decades, right? I think the 19 year, the time itself, speak for itself, because that it's time to reestablish, bilateral relations between Korea and Russia. I think that's great timing, and I think it's time to, haven't talked for a long time actually, the bilateral talks. So I guess it's good time to start talking about the North Korean issue too.
So better late than never.
Yeah, right time, right.
So it's likely the president will seek Moscow's support in achieving denuclearization and peace on the peninsula, likely hot topics. What specific role would he ask Russia to play in terms of that?
In terms of the respect to the Russian law in this situation, I think there's two perspectives. First thing is like President Moon talked about the three-party economic cooperation the last year at the Eastern Economic Forum in Vladivostok. And mainly I think talk about the South Korean investment into Russian area, and then they talk about the 9 specific areas also. But however, you have to look at the historic perspective. We used to hear that 6-party talks, right, about North Korean nuclear issues, right? So Russia used to be a key player on the North Korean issue, but somehow these days after President Trump have some more like relation with the Chinese government, more active law with Chinese law. So I guess Russia seems like it's time to get join the discussion about how to denuclearize North Korean issue.
So Russia is certainly feeling the heat of possibly being skipped.
Yeah, well, I don't say skip, but yeah, but I don't think they feel really appreciate this situation, because it's just like a Japanese government situation, because that they used to be a party to, the major member of the 6-party talk, also the member of the UN Security Council. So they do play a key role. They could play it. So I guess they expect to play a greater role. Also, that's what the President Moon expecting from them.
China certainly seems to be cozying up with North Korea nicely, but I guess it's similar to Russia and Japan in terms of fervently trying to be on the same page.
It's very interesting. I was surprised. I looked it up. What has been happening between, the bilateral relations between North Korea and China, is quite different from the North Korea and Russia. And it's obviously, according to the press, Kim Jong-un has been invited by the Russian government, I think more than twice the last year, but he never, actually get to the Russian territory yet. But however, you get Xi Jinping's situation in China, he visited quite often, right? So I guess it looks like he's more really working with Chinese government rather than Russian government. So I guess that how Russian government feel, because they got skipped in a way, relative term, right?
So they must be quite excited to have President Moon Jae-in in Russia to address the lower house right now.
Yeah, I guess so. That's a great honor. Whoever, any president have this kind of a deliberate speech at any national assembly or even any nation. That's a great honor, and that means that they want to start new relationship, something closer relationship with Korean government. I think that's a great signal to both countries.
It's quite significant because this is the first time an Asian head of state is at that venue delivering a speech.
You're right. Yeah, I think that's I think that's very interesting, because that Russia, look at the newspapers, news coverage, Russia haven't played much role, I see, for the North Korean issues for a few years, I think, after Donald Trump, took office, right? So I guess they kind of try to do something, and plus, and you have to look at the economic perspective. And what if there's a unification of the Korean Peninsula? And which country would be most benefit? Yeah, first maybe China, but also Russia will be very, significant impact on their economy because of the unification in Korean Peninsula. I think they are quite excited to see any kind of economic cooperation. They will expect it, and I'm sure the President Moon also expecting same things and some economic cooperation between two countries.
Apart from the obvious reasons, is there any specific motivational factor for Russia to ask President Moon Jae-in, the South Korean leader, to be the one to, break the ice in terms of being the first Asian leader to address the assembly?
Well, I think they kind of giving them just, I think President Moon doing quite well as the, arbitrator for the, the North Korean issue, like Pyongyang and Washington talk. And he, they see that how, President Moon doing a great job in terms of the, mediating or, play with, work with the both countries and leaders, right? So which turned out to be not really easy player. They're very hard players. So he tried to be very neutral and try to solve the problem in diplomatic way. And I guess this kind of the Russian government tried to send message to the South Korean government, say, we'd like to be your friend, very good friend. I guess that's the sign, I guess.
Compared to the previous times when the two leaders met, Vladimir Putin and President Moon Jae-in, this is not the first time. How has their relationship progressed? Or is there any development?
I think that's the third time, right? That's the third time.
Right.
First one was G20 in Germany, and second time was
forum.
Economic Forum in Vladivostok. And I think that the G20 meeting was really not, official meeting, and the Vladivostok meeting was that the President Moon talked about the, economic, Eastern Economic Forum, right here, and then he talked about the three-party economic cooperation. So it's kind of it's more like he come up with a policy, right, new initiative, and introduced to the Russian government. Say, well, I have a new idea, new approach to the situation, and I think it's time for Russian government and even North Korean government try to answer and respond to his President Moon's new proposal. I think that's what the President Moon expecting from President Putin.
That's what we're expecting, but then there are also skeptics that says we won't get a lot accomplished with this just third meeting.
Right. Well, I think that any kind of summit, right? Summit, you don't really get substance, right? There's it's more like diplomatic. So it's the leaders will decide the direction. So in details, we'll come up with staff. So I think that's as long as both leaders come into any agreement on specific agenda, for example, natural gas pipeline, something. So that's very important. And in terms of natural gas pipeline. Actually, about a long time ago, I was in an internship doing the Congress at Washington, D.C.
It must have been a long time ago.
Very long time. Okay. And what happened was that I was surprised because even that time, the Japanese government officials stopped by the Congress and tried to talk about the natural gas pipeline from Russia going through Korea. That's almost 2 decades, more than 2 decades. But they've been really, eager to get natural gas pipeline, Japanese government. And also, I think President Moon also talked about the possibility to connect, the natural gas line underwater to Japan. So I guess it's a win-win situation because from the South Korean perspective, it's more like a cost sharing. You can, get a cheaper pipeline gas, and Japan also get cheaper. Also, there's economic perspective because there were high consumption of both countries of natural gases, so they will get, better competition from Russian. So I guess that's a great good news for the both countries.
Well, the very business savvy Japan must have their ears and eyes glued to the screen right now as this development is unfolding.
Yeah, I guess I think it's Japanese government is more interesting about this bilateral talk rather than North Korean government. I think they know it's quite clear that direction. So I think it's people more expecting more details, but personally, I don't think they will get much detail this time because it's too short time. So the detail will be leave to the staff. People, ministers, they will decide details later on.
Right, this won't be the last time the two leaders meet. There's also the other economic forum coming up in September. It's possible a trilateral talk could be held with the North Korean leader. How is Japan feeling right now? Because so far, since the thawing of inter-Korean ties, they've really expressed some agitation towards being left out.
Right. Oh, that's the kind of negotiation situation, right? You want to play a good cop or bad cop situation, I say. I guess the problem was the Japanese government approach was not really working well in this situation. And I think initially they tried to get along with U.S. government, but somehow it didn't work out, actually.
It backfired.
Yeah, it didn't work out, and they were kind of depressed. Also, for example, Trump, had an executive order to, get out of TPP after, 2 days, a few days after he took office, and they really infuriated the Japanese government because the only reason they got TPP was that they tried to get into, basically free trade agreement with U.S. government. Multilaterally, but they just gonna dump, Japan. So they're very upset. And then what they do happen was they kind of revenge. They start FTA with EU, right? So that's how things happens. So I guess they try to find an alternative way to get into the scene. But however, I guess they need to change their strategy to deal with this situation.
Right. While Japan was playing somewhat of a musical chair with the possible listeners to their pleas, how is Russia learning from the mistakes from Tokyo?
Well, I guess their situation is quite different actually from the beginning. I mean, Japan is not there really I mean, it's not as close as the technically. I mean, geographically, right? They're separated by sea, but Russia is really, you can't just walk from Russia, North Korea. I mean, you can swim, right? The rivers, or swim across the river, or you can even walk there, walk over the bridges. So it's quite close. I mean, historically, right? So I guess there's many things actually in practical sense. There's quite opportunity, business opportunity for both countries. Even that's covering, no Japanese, business opportunity as well, right? So I think that's great. Two opportunity for all countries, I guess. It's a Eurasian countries.
Well, Washington did not respond very positively whenever North Korea goes back to its big brother China to hold talks. They probably are on the edge of their seats waiting for the results. How are they responding to this Seoul-Moscow meetup that's going on?
I mean, the North Korea?
The U.S.
Oh, U.S. I think it's even the most. The Japan maybe quite have a keen interest about whatever happened result, because it really have direct impact on their economic, opportunities to the Eurasian continental, I guess, connected to the continental side of Asia. But however, I think the U.S. Trump side, I don't think they really, pay great and big attention and pay attention to this situation, because that Russia hasn't really speak up for this North Korean issue, right? I think they want to keep distance from North Korean issues, but however, the problem is that when you have to go to United Nations issue somehow, for the sanctions, right? UN Security Council sanctions, something like that, they need support from Russian government. So they will follow with how Russian government deal with South Korea in terms of North Korean denuclearization of North Korean and peace issues. But end of the day, U.S. government need a Russian government cooperation on the UN Security Council. Right, that's, I think they pay attention to from the more like a political side, on international politics side, right?
Right, hasn't been a lot of interactions between the two giants so far. What about Russia's perspective in terms of when South Korea reaches out and discuss possible economic cooperation?
I mean, Russian, they're very happy and clap their hands, right? Oh, it's great, right? Great opportunity. I think that's also a great opportunity for the South Korean government and the companies industry, right? Because it's you can go there, and I can imagine someday I can take a train to all the way to London. That's really great. I mean, it's like dream come true situation. I mean, if it takes a long time, maybe people will take a flight. But anyway, the thing is that you have whether you have option, that's the things, right? To have only things, you have to take a plane or you can take a train. That's things. And then if you see the 19th century Korean marble, it's very common. You see the railroad to Russia, Vladivostok, and so it's a part of Korean history. And the culture is Russia, but Russia is kind of for a long time it's been forgotten in Korea, and I think it's a great opportunity for both countries, and to exchange their ideas and cultures, get involved with each other. I think that's great timing, right?
Well, stepping aside from economic cooperation, because economic revitalization for North Korea through the two hookup is definitely something that people are looking forward to. What about cultural aspects between South Korea and Russia?
That's very interesting, because I'm really interested too. But I wonder, the K-pop culture, how much they penetrate is popular when
it's big in Europe.
Yeah, Europe, I know, but I actually haven't followed with what happened in Russia, actually, frankly. So I want to see how things happens, and the Korean K-pop singers may go to Moscow, musical show. I think that might be a great opportunity. Also, I think there's a cultural exchange perspective. A lot of things we could have some lot of things. And Russia, I mean, historically has been a big player in Korean history. So I think that they are interested in Korean Peninsula from a historic perspective. Also, this time we are interested. We want them to join this situation. It's quite rare actually. So the Korean government actually asked them to join some kind of some project. That's kind of different, I think, from the history.
Right. Apart from the big names, a possible big picture for economic projects, we haven't heard any details about such cultural exchanges, but I'm sure the two sides have a lot in common and a lot to learn and share from. Going back to economic cooperation again, Professor, what specific details do you think the two sides can iron out in this two-day meeting?
Yeah, and just go back to last year, the Vladivostok, the Eastern Economic Forum, and President Moon come up with idea, right? The 9-bridge strategy. And the 9 bridges means so he wants to set up 9 bridges between Korea and Russia. And so 9 bridges means that, so what I mean bridge, here's, for example, natural gas pipeline, first one, and also there's electricity, and kind of share electricity, between the countries, yeah, and the railway connect to the trans, Siberian railway, so you can get to Europe by train. So I think there's things, and luckily, and even now, South Korea and both Korea have the same type of railway, so you can, I guess you can connect, but I'm afraid that their system might be, out of date when something lost it. But some, you might have some jobs, some cleanup jobs, but I guess there's great possibility to do it. And I do remember seeing the news coverage about, they already got the team, special task force in South Korean government about the railroad, exchange between 2 countries.
When we talk about economic cooperation, economic activities, and it involves North Korea, we cannot skip sanctions.
Right,
what about it?
Well, that's very interesting. I mean, I think that one of the reasons we have to talk to President Putin is about sanction issue, because we talk about the UN Security Council and you have the UN resolution, right? So to get rid of any get anything with the UN resolution, you have to sanctions. You have to go to Security Council, and Russia will cast a vote there, right? So that's a big issue. And plus, whenever you talk about the sanction, you have to talk about you shouldn't overlook the Kaesong situation. So Kaesong is the exceptional situation. Even the Korea-US FTA, any products originated from Kaesong is considered as South Korean products. So I think there's some technical issues, right? And then we have to solve it. And then I'm just wondering, what if they expanding the special economic zone, and if you really have a small job modification to current Korean-US FTA, you could have like trilateral FTA, and you can expand it. Theoretically, you can do it, because that the Kaesong exception, you could. I mean, if both countries agree that we would like to expand exception, in the scope of exception, Kaesong to Kaesong and Pyongyang, that might be a new opportunity, for the both countries. Oh, 3 countries, right? Even U.S. and North Korea and South Korea.
Right, it's certainly an untapped gold mine there, but there were some instances in the past, the unilateral closure of Kaesong. What about how would investors respond to that possible risk factor?
But that's interesting. But the unilateral shutdown was made by South Korean government, right, not by North Korean government.
But motivated by North Korea's provocations.
Right. Actually, from my personal perspective, I think it's more like political decision made.
Okay.
I think, and it was not. I think that's really wrong decision made by former President Park Geun-hye, because that you should get to hold it, because it's only tie connecting to North Korea from between South and North, right? And I was negotiating the FTA negotiations with other countries, and one of the key agenda for the FTA negotiation was the Kaesong exception. So every time we have a negotiation with Singapore and Japan and then European Free Association, Free Trade Association, well, first thing is like Kaesong exception. So it wasn't that easy, but we will try to get it Kaesong exception, throughout the decades. But somehow, boom, right? That's really a bad decision made by the politicians.
Right. The joint industrial park project was certainly a beacon of hope. What other possible joint ventures can the countries outside of the 2 Koreas learn from in terms of inter-Korean cooperation of past? Other than Kaesong Industrial Complex, we had tourism and other interactions as well.
So we talk. I guess last time the Singapore summit, right? The Kim Jong-un had a surprise visit at nighttime, right? And bring his bodyguard didn't know where he was, and he went to the Botanic Garden, right, and Singapore, and see how it works. And also, I remember seeing the news covers on the North Korean try to develop like some entertainment, and it's like. Some resort area near the Russian border, I guess. Is it Russian border or Russian or Chinese
They have a
border?
lot of blue sky projects.
Right. So they will. So I guess he will see. Maybe he thought about Singapore as the economic model, success model. So you want to see how it really works. But it will take time, no matter who does, it takes time because their economy is not strong, it's not really stabilized. So I guess it will take some time to reach any status he wanted, right?
So when South Korea pitches about firstly about economic cooperation and coordination towards peace on the peninsula, what will Russia bring to the table as something that they would like to focus on for the talks?
Well, actually, practical perspective, in terms of the de-nuclearization and peace, maintenance of peace in Korean Peninsula, they can play key player in the UN Security Council. Like that's the one thing they can come up with, right? And other thing is, I think maybe they're expecting more, right, in terms of bargaining, because they're expecting investment from South Korean government, right? Yeah, so I guess it's kind of, we can invest and they can help, right? That's the win-win situation. Plus, and so there's some investment issue, foreign investment issue, outbound transaction is now these days going to like Southeast Asia. So now if we have Russia, we have option to get, Russian opportunities. That's the great opportunity, right?
Investment seems like a 21st century form of blood-forged relationship to make sure we both have something at stake and we can't easily just pull our foot out of the door.
Yeah, but plus, and I think that will be a great opportunity, right? Yeah.
Right, let's check out the scene right now at the State Duma where President Moon Jae-in is about to step up to the podium and address everyone who is attending right now.
Коллеги, слово предоставляется президенту Республики Корея, господину Мун Чжэ-ину.
Honorable people of Russia, Speaker Vyacheslav Viktorovich Volodin, the chairman of the State Duma, distinguished members of the State Duma. On my way to Moscow, I felt great awe the extensive landscape bestows on humans. It led me to think how such surroundings would have equipped Russians with profound understanding of nature and human beings. With the impact as big as the Eurasian continent, Russia left significant marks in world history. The Patriotic War and the Great Patriotic War changed the course of world history, and it has been leading the human intellectual history as well as science and technology. The birth of the State Duma where I stand today was possible by the power of the Russian people. It represents the will of the Russians, and it manifests the unity of the people. I would like to express my deepest gratitude to Speaker Volodin, the Deputy Chairperson, Olga Yepifanov, the Chairman of the Committee on International Affairs, Leonid Slutsky, and all the members of the State Duma for giving me the opportunity to be the first President of the Republic of Korea to address the State Duma. It is of great honor for me. At the same time, I feel the expectations of the Russian government, the parliament, and the people on the development of our new two countries. The people of Russia. Russian historian and geographer Lev Gumilyov said, if Russia is to be saved, it will only be through Eurasianism. The vast Eurasian continent is where exchanges and interactions of big and small civilizations take place as it advances into the future and foster hope. President Vladimir Putin's new Eastern policy is the declaration of the Eurasian era that embodies the dream of peace and co-prosperity. Bringing the advantages of the Western and Oriental civilizations into the colossal melting pot of Eurasia, the policy is a grand planning that proposes a new vision to the mankind. Going beyond the permanent peace on the Korean Peninsula, Koreans long for peace and shared prosperity of the entire Northeast Asia. The new Northern policy I announced last year at the Eastern Economic Forum is the dream of Korean people responding to the new Eastern policy. I believe cooperation between Korea and Russia is the cornerstone of peace on the Korean Peninsula and prosperity in Northeast Asia, which I have put my efforts in wholeheartedly. Immediately after taking office last year, I had a telephone conversation with President Putin. I was the first Korean president to send special envoy to discuss about cooperation for peaceful resolution of North Korean nuclear issues and Far East development. I also established the Presidential Committee on Northern Economic Cooperation that is dedicated to the economic cooperation with Russia. Last September, President Putin invited me to the Eastern Economic Forum, where I announced the new Northern policy. Together with President Putin, I discussed about substantial ways of economic cooperation between Korea and Russia. In January this year, a meaningful event was held in my hometown of Jeojedo Island that garnered the attention of the people around the world to Eurasia and the North Pole. The ice-breaking LNG carrier Vladimir Ruzanov, named after the Russian geologist, made its pilot departure. I was present on the site to congratulate and promote the achievement Russia and Korea had made together. Today, I hope the endeavors of the Korean people to prosper together with Russia can truly be conveyed to you. I believe our friendship can open up the immeasurable potential of Eurasia. The people of Russia. Koreans have novels by Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, Turgenev, and Pushkin's poetry on our bookshelves. In my youth, I remember fathoming unfamiliar Russian place names and characters and asking myself about the meaning of human beings, nature, history, and life. Modern Russian literature was introduced in Korea in the early 20th century, which had great impact on the development of the Korean contemporary literature. Russian literature was the textbook of humanism in Korea. Through the excellent description of human dignity and spirituality, it impresses the significance of the spiritual values on us living the material civilization. The first man in space, Yuri Gagarin, presented us with an enlightenment that goes beyond science and technology. He taught us how valuable and absolute Earth is. I believe the power of Russia lies in the profound understanding of human beings. This became the power of Russian people who does not succumb to any challenges or difficulties. Koreans have traditional values of respect, cooperation, and trust among people. The strength we found in such values enabled us to overcome foreign intrusion and brought us where we are today as a confident nation. We are the only country that became independent after the Second World War to achieve strong economic growth together with the development of democracy. Just like the Russians, Koreans are mentally strong. I believe this is why we both love Tolstoy. People of Russia. 202 years ago, Jo In-young, a Korean diplomatic delegation to Beijing, met with a missionary of the Russian Orthodox Church, Vichelin, whom he shared friendships with. Ever since, the relations between Russia and Korea has been characterized by friendship and respect. In 1905, Minister Lee Bom-jin, the first Korean diplomatic minister to Russia, was in Russia when he heard the news of ruined country. It was the Russian government who extended a warm helping hand to him. Numerous fighters for national independence, such as An Jung-gun, Hong Bom-do, Choi Jae-hyung, Lee Sang-seol, sought asylum here in Russia. With the help of the Russian people, they built up their strength to promote the recovery of national sovereignty. In the late 1980s, the Korean government pursued the Northern policy to tear down the walls of the Cold War on the Korean Peninsula. The then Soviet government crossed the wall of ideology to send a large team to the 1988 Seoul Olympic Games. Friendship and trust was built between the people of our two nations that culminated in the establishment of diplomatic ties in 1990. Today, Korean automobiles and electronics produced in Russia is widely accepted by the Russian people. In 2013, Russia transferred the advanced space technology to Korea, of which Korea could successfully launch the narrow space rocket with. Back in May, President Putin announced national development goals for the Russian Federation by 2024. It aims to bring change that is felt by the people and an economy where individuals are affluent. It shares the same goals as the people-centered economy that I am pursuing. The purpose is to return the benefits of economic growth to the people. The dream of our both countries in the Far East region are no different. Striving for peace and prosperity of Eurasia is the mission granted to us by our people.
Honorable people of Russia, Speaker Volodin and members of the State Duma, year 2020 marks the 30th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic ties between Russia and Korea. To commemorate this meaningful mark, we agreed to strengthen our cooperation for the development of Eurasia and laid out substantial targets to achieve trade value of $30 billion and exchange of human resources of 1 million. I would like to take this opportunity to explain our plans to expand cooperation between Russia and Korea. First is expansion of future growth engines. Preparing for future growth through innovation is pivotal to provide jobs to the people of both countries, as well as to lay the groundwork for sustainable growth. We will establish the Korea-Russia Innovation Center in Korea and expand the Korea-Russia Science and Technology Cooperation Center in Moscow. Russia has the world's best source technologies and basic science and technology. I hope this cooperation between Russia and Korea, who is an IT powerhouse, will take the lead in the fourth industrial revolution era. Second is cooperation on the Far East development. At the Eastern Economic Forum last year, I proposed the 9-bridge strategy as the core of the bilateral cooperation of our two countries. We need to strengthen our cooperation in the core sectors of gas, railway, electricity, shipbuilding, job creation, agriculture, fisheries, seaports, and Arctic shipping routes. Broadening private sector participation is also necessary. Cooperation forums are in preparation between the Russian Far East region and the local governments of Korea. Third is the strengthening of the foundation for welfare enhancement and exchange. One of the top priorities of Russia's 2024 national development goals is the improvement of national health for better life quality. To work together towards this initiative, Korea's cutting-edge medical technology will be presented as Skokovo, and a state-of-the-art Korean-style general hospital will be established based on the cooperation between Russian and Korean companies. It will provide medical services specialized in cancer, kidneys, and cranial nerve, and give help to rehabilitation. I hope that the people of the two countries will be happier through our close cooperation. I hope that the people will be able to experience firsthand in their daily lives the importance of the bilateral relations. Honorable people of Russia, tomorrow marks the 77th anniversary of the beginning of Russia's Great Patriotic War. It's the Remembrance and Condolences Day to pay tribute to the numerous fallen heroes and innocent victims. I hope it will be a chance to reflect on how important peace is not only to Russia, but also to the entire humanity. The preciousness of peace is felt even deeper by the people who dedicated themselves to bring peace in the ravages of war. Just like Russia, Korea also suffered a horrific war. And as the son of a refugee, I myself was keenly aware of the agonies of war and the value of peace. Today, a historic transformation is taking place on the Korean Peninsula. In April, I met with Chairman Kim Jong-un of the DPRK. Through the Panmunjom Declaration, we pledged in front of the world a complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and declared there will be no more war on the peninsula. In the DPRK-US summit that followed suit, complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and an end to hostile relations between the two countries was declared. North Korea destroyed his nuclear test site and missile test site in line with their substantial measures towards complete denuclearization. The Republic of Korea and the U.S. are responding by easing the military pressure on North Korea, such as suspending joint military exercises. The Republic of Korea, DPRK, and the U.S. are putting behind the dark times of hostilities and proceeding to an era of peace and cooperation. And in this remarkable change, active support and cooperation from the Russian government and its people were of great help. I have been dreaming of permanent peace and shared prosperity on the Korean Peninsula and Eurasia. I believe that all the members of the Duma who are here today will join me on this journey. When a true peace regime is established on the Korean Peninsula, inter-Korean economic cooperation will take place in earnest, which will be expanded into trilateral cooperation with Russia. Basic discussions were being held about the trilateral economic cooperation among South and North Koreas and Russia in the sectors of railway, gas pipe, and electricity grid. When cooperation in those areas take place, it will be a robust foundation for the regional economic community in Northeast Asia. Also, the solid peace regime between South and North Koreas can grow into the multilateral Northeast Asia Peace and Security Cooperation Framework. Honorable people of Russia, members of the State Duma, the Trans-Siberian Railway that runs from the Moscow Yaroslavsky station to the maritime port city of Vladivostok is not merely a simple railroad. It's the road of life built with the golden hands of the Russian laborers. It's also the road of civilization that broadened the horizon of world recognition and as well as a road of peace. This is not merely a road for goods and resources, but it's where the East and the West meet in the middle of the Eurasian region. And it's truly the gateway to the era of Eurasia. The Trans-Siberian Railway that has been running for a century is now more than just a center of land transportation. It's becoming a symbol and foundation of the Eurasian community. And through permanent and everlasting peace on the Korean Peninsula, Korea now looks forward to the Trans-Siberian Railway will be able to reach all the way to Busan, the southern end of the Korean Peninsula, where I grew up. I hope the two Koreas will take part in the new possibilities of Eurasia and achieve co-prosperity. What we need now is the Russian proverb that says one head is good, while two heads are better. When the wisdoms of South Korea and Russia come together, and if it's joined by North Korea, the dream of the Eurasian era as big as the continent will spread before our eyes. Last but not least, I would like to congratulate you on the successful hosting of the 2018 World Cup Games, a festival of the world. During the Pyeongchang Winter Olympic Games back in February, myself and fellow Koreans gave big applauses to the Russian athletes for their great performance. I hope that the Russian people could also applaud for the Korean players participating in the 2018 Russian World Cup. The people of Russia and Korea are confident about the new future of the two countries that awaits us. By building deep respect and trust in each other, we will be able to overcome any difficulties and challenges. New hope for mankind lies in Eurasia, where nature and humans coexist. Going beyond the age of war, Russia and the Republic of Korea will definitely walk together towards in the era of peace and prosperity. Большое спасибо. Thank you.
And that was President Moon Jae-in addressing the State Duma, Moscow, Russia, where the lower house of Russia's Federal Assembly and the members have gathered. Certainly, he started with a pleasant praise of the Russian people and their spirit. Well, how do you make of the response and the points that President Moon Jae-in tried to focus on in this speech?
I think there's the most important line was that he quote that where the East meet the West, right? So I guess Korean can be a gateway to the Eurasian continent in the future. I guess that's the great idea. And then I guess Russia also share the same goal, I guess. And I guess if I may add, one thing he didn't say about it, about the 2018 Russian World Cup, because he predicted, he hoping, right, the Russian team, a Korean soccer team meet the Russian team at the semifinal.
Many experts would say not very likely.
Right.
Regardless, we will cheer them on to the best of our ability. It's been 3 decades in terms of diplomatic ties. In your opinion, Professor, how fruitful has it been?
I mean, as you see that we've been not much bilateral transactions, really. And I think that's the time really get to close, get to know each other. And plus, I think President Moon talked about the literature, Russian literature, and I do remember that reading the Russian poems, when I was in school. I think that's a great start. I mean, culture exchange, and we try to understand each other first, and then get some time and try to find, making strength in economic tie as well. And I think you can start it, K-pop for exchange, right? I guess that's the good point.
Right, common ground and what they can build on seem to be the focal point in President Moon Jae-in's speech. What do you see? How do you perceive the changes that could come from today's turning point?
I think he's emphasized the multilateral approach to the North Korean situation. I think that's a really great point because of Donald Trump administration's kind of very unilateral approach and sometimes very seems like a unilateral approach that really bother other countries. But I think President Moon will correctly point out the point that he'd like to have the multilateral approach. That in that perspective, in South Korean government need Russian help, assistance in terms with solving the North Korean issue, denuclearization and peace in Korean Peninsula.
Was it a good crescendo for President Moon Jae-in to emphasize Russians? They are no strangers to war and its I guess repercussions, to highlight the fact that they should cooperate and work with South Korea to work towards peace in the peninsula.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, and then I guess nobody wants war right anywhere. So it's very peaceful time. So I guess time to work with, together as a friends. I think that's the great time. And so, we've been a long friend, actually, from the decade. I mean, from centuries in Russia. But somehow we've been, perhaps because of the North Korea in between South and Russia and perhaps South and China. So it's kind of disconnected for a long time. But, even the Chinese government, people and, cultural exchange is getting very well. People like K-pop and we like the, Chinese, culture as well, right?
What do you expect? What do you anticipate from a possible trilateral meeting between the leaders of South, North Korea, and Russia, which could happen in September?
Yeah, they were very exciting. I mean, I wonder where they're gonna meet. I mean, it's gonna be Pyongyang or Moscow or Seoul. I mean, it's very even I don't know. We'll see where they're gonna meet. But I think they will have a meeting there sometime soon, perhaps after the bilateral summit between North Korea and Washington. Trump, I guess.
Right. There was a possibility of President Putin being invited to North Korea, but so far not much talks about something happening in Seoul.
Yeah, I guess they were discussing the possibility, and I think he's eager to go there. So because he tried to play, great role.
Right now it's an open page, anything goes.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for your time and your expertise, Professor Han Jun-sung. We hope to have you back here again next time soon.
Right.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Now, that's all we have for you on tonight's edition of Arirang News Center, wherever you may be tuning in from. Thank you for staying with us.